Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be the beginning of this new series all about standalones, because I don't know about you, but I feel like my attention span has been reduced with the pandemic and TikTok. But really, I find that in pretty much every genre, we are forced fed a lot of series all the time, and I sometimes just like to read one book and be done with it. So I thought I would do 3 different videos about it. This one is going to be all about the ones that I find underrated, either on Booktube or in the world. Basically ones that I think deserve more hype. And then I'm going to do one about the ones that I think are definitely very popular but are worth the hype. And then lastly, I'm going to do a version where I feel like these series should have been either standalone or like shorter, because I find that they've been stretched out too much. What do you think? So I tried to pick out a few that I gave great ratings to. All of these got at least 3.5, which for me is good stars out of 5. And then a few different genres to mix it up and have something for everyone. So let's get to it. A lot of these are actually kind of short, but this one is a very chunky one. It is also a fantasy book, which I feel like fantasy, there aren't that many standalones, and I feel like the ones that are standalones end up becoming series later on. The Priory of the Orange Tree, which is about 900 pages. It's a chunky one, but I feel like you get a ton of world building in this one. Definitely something that you have to go into knowing that you're going to get in depth into each character's point of view. So I believe there are 4 different ones, and I feel like you really get attached to each story before you switch to the next one. You get a queendom, which isn't something you see often. There's also dragons, which, yes, more, always. The magic system is really fascinating. I feel like I'm kind of cheating here, but I feel like I wouldn't be mad if there were more books, maybe just companion series, you know? Not necessarily continuing this one, but I feel like the world was so well developed that I want to follow certain categories, certain, like, let's be real, I just want to follow the witches. So I wouldn't be mad if we got more from this world, because you really get to see a lot of it. There are also some LGBTQ plus characters in here, and the story is really fascinating, but it ends up being summarized as a battle between good and evil. And throughout the book, you're kind of just building up to that moment. I do want to mention that I feel like the epic battle at the end, it's not a spoiler, ends up being a little underwhelming. I feel like things happen kind of fast, but I still think the whole book is absolutely worth a read. I ended up giving, I think, 4 stars, which is really good for me. And again, there's no cliffhanger at the end that makes you frustrated and makes you wait a whole year before you get to read the rest. So if you're looking for a really great fantasy to get into, a standalone, I would recommend this one. To Be Thought Unfortunate by Becky Chambers. This is one of my favorite books of the year. So I did mention I would try to include it in every recommendation video as possible, because everyone needs to read this. She is one of my favorite authors at this point. She writes a lot of sci-fi, but wholesome ones, very character-driven one with great LGBTQ plus representation, which I find is not something you see a lot of. Like, wholesome and sci-fi, not really the first thing I think about, but she does it so well. Her writing basically feels like home to me. In this one, you're following 4 different astronauts that are sent to 3 planets and 1 moon, and they try to discover any type of form of life. And what I like also is how it starts, because I find it super intriguing. The first sentence is literally, "If you read nothing else we've sent home, please at least read this," which, yes, absolutely. So you kind of start from the beginning and you see what they went through, how things went wrong. And I'm gonna keep it vague because obviously spoiler free, but definitely one of my favorite read of the year. It's 140 pages and it is a standalone, so it's not a lot of investment. Personally, I think I'm going to be rereading it in December, because in December I never really do a lot of reading for this channel because I'm too busy filming a video for every 2 days. So things get a little hectic, so it's the perfect time to reread, and usually I don't even reread books. But this one, it will happen twice in 1 year. That's just never heard of for me. The next book I wanted to talk about is something that I don't think I've ever even re-mentioned on this channel after reading it, but I can see it being included in a few different kind of recommendation videos. So here we are. The Storied Life of A.G. Fikri. This one is written by Gabrielle Zevin, and this is an adult contemporary. It has one of those premises that just warm up my cold dead heart. You're following a grumpy old man, widow, and a kid basically changes their whole life. You know what I mean? In this case, he works in a bookstore. He owns a bookstore, which is also something I enjoy reading about, in a small little town. And then one little girl, a 2-year-old, I feel like. Her age is not really important, but she's left in his bookstore and he ends up trying to take care of her. And things happen for him. So again, keeping it vague, but definitely something kind of wholesome. It's not really big either. It's like 260 pages, and it's something that I pretty much read in one day, which I don't do often, but a few books in here I did. So definitely something you can't put down, and again, it's one and done. Also something pretty wholesome, which I find that 2020 we probably need it. So if you were looking for a new recommendation to read, you know, towards the holidays, definitely something I would recommend. Next, I wanted to talk about Replay by Ken Grimwood. I read it a few years ago, and I've definitely talked about it, but I feel like it deserves more love. Once again, has one of my favorite premises, which is someone reliving their lives over and over again. I just read all of them, watch all the movies and TV shows about it. But this one, I enjoyed it because there's a nice twist to it, which again, not going to spoil it. In this one, you're following a 43-year-old man who is very unhappy in life. He is not happy in his marriage, he's not happy with his job, and he ends up reliving his life over and over. Something happens, which again, I'm going to keep it vague, but I really appreciated how, first off, he's actually doing things we would do. I find nothing more frustrating than reading about a character doing things that nobody would do, like ever. I mean, first thing you think of if you're reliving your life is that you would try to make money using your knowledge. Would you not? I feel like that's the basic stuff. But I find that nobody ever does that, but he does, at least in the beginning. And there's a nice twist to it too, which I find isn't something that I've read about, which made it even more interesting. And I find it for an adult, I guess it's sci-fi. I also appreciated how it became a little bit deeper, a little bit more philosophical towards the end. And it definitely is one of my favorite book with that premise. Definitely one of the ones that kept me guessing the most. So I do think a lot of people would enjoy it. It might not be the most underrated book in the world, but I don't find that I see a lot of people reading it on Booktube. So check it out. The next book I'm cheating a little bit because it's a new release. So maybe it won't be underrated in a few months, but right now it's not that known. So I wanted to talk about The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. It came out earlier this month and amazing. It's my third book by the author, and he's basically becoming one of my favorite authors. In this book, you're following a woman who is depressed and suicidal, so obviously trigger warnings for this, but it's something that the author has been dealing with his whole life, and his books tend to reflect that. So she ends up in between life and death, and she goes to this midnight library where basically every book in the library is a different life that she could have lived if she had made different choices, and she gets to try them on, and it kind of helps her process her regrets in life, like things that maybe she lived her life for other people, and trying to figure out what she really wants. And it goes, you know, in that direction, but again, keeping it spoiler free. It's definitely something I recommend you have time to read in a day, because I made a mistake of actually starting it pretty late at night, and that was not good because I didn't want to put it down, but I did end up reading it in 24 hours, so that says it all. I definitely thought it was a really unique way to talk about this topic, so if you are interested, I would definitely recommend checking out The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I wanted to include a mystery thriller, even though a lot of them tend to be standalone. I feel like more and more I'm seeing a lot of series, like detective ones. This one is definitely very unique. The Kind Worth Killing by Pier Swanson. This is my favorite book by him. In my opinion, it's the best one he has written. I have read like 4 of his books so far, 5, and it's the one I recommend the most. This is a pretty messed up book, definitely a lot of twist, although I didn't feel like they felt forced. I'm very, very picky, I feel like, with mystery thrillers. I find that a lot of them tend to have, you know, the mom, the alcoholic mom especially, things revolve around her being a wife, and this one is like nothing like that. In this one, you're following 2 people that randomly meet at the airport bar, and they start talking, and they kind of end up pretty much accidentally planning the murder of the wife of one of these people. And yeah, I'm gonna keep it like this because it's better if you go into it blind, but definitely very messed up. Definitely did not see these twists coming, and definitely something I would recommend. I really enjoy books that have unique premises, and this one is no different. This is 6 Weeks, and it's always a fun book to talk about. You're following a group of people who are in a spaceship. In this world, people have clones, so you can store your memory and implant it in a different body of yourself kind of thing. And it's a murder mystery in space with clones. Basically, the book starts with everyone died without saving their last memory. And since they are in a spaceship, it means one of them did it. But they don't know who, they don't know how, and they kind of have to try and piece things back together, which, how cool is that? So definitely something I would highly recommend you check out. Definitely a book that, once again, I could not put down because I wanted to figure out what happened. And once again, it is a standalone, so you get the answers by the end. There's no cliffhanger, you know? So if you're looking for a new unique sci-fi to check out, I would definitely recommend you pick up 6 Weeks. I'm realizing I included quite a few sci-fi, but who's surprised here? I do enjoy recommending them. So last but not least for this video, I wanted to talk about The Loth of Evan by Ursula K. Le Guin. Once again, very unique premise. And also a shorter book. It's 180 pages. This one you're following a man who starts realizing that his dreams start affecting the world and how it is. And he goes to see a psychiatrist, kind of trying to figure out what is wrong with him. But then the psychiatrist tries to influence him, and in that way influence his dreams, so he can try to perfect our world. Or will he? A very intriguing book. Be warned if English is not your first language like me, the writing is a little bit more complicated, but I found it very satisfying to go through. Another book that made me think quite a bit. So if you haven't checked out Ursula K. Le Guin, I highly recommend her as an author, but this one is definitely a shorter one, a standalone that you can read. Maybe not one day, but on its own at least. So that's gonna be it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Definitely give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't want to miss the rest of this series. I will be putting more videos on the screen that I recommend you check out, and I will see you in my next one very soon. Bye.